Hello, I'm Jim Roberts, host of Senior Living in Alexandria, and here we are in September. We're at the end of a three-part series that we're conducting from over the summer for senior living. This is information that's useful for seniors, parents, friends, children, families, caregivers, anybody that cares about elderly senior people. And we welcome once again, Mark Freese has been my partner in these three series from Merrill Lynch, and he's brought in a useful perspective, but he's also been extremely helpful in arranging very interesting people with a variety of perspectives. With us today, we have Lori Krause, who's with Keller Williams Realty. We have Matt Quinn of Quinn's Auction Galleries, and we have Dan Ruttenberg. He was here 2 months ago. We didn't get enough of Dan. He came back, and he's with Smolin Plevy Law Firm. So today, the series started with planning in advance, what you have to do to plan as a senior. We then moved in August to assessing your situation, building a team. How do you take stock of what you've done and what you need to do, and what kind of team do you have to form? And then, so this session is the end of that. What do you do to implement when you're getting close to the end of life decisions and afterlife? How does your family, what professionals do you need? How do you prepare for that? So that's today's topic. Let's get started. Dan, let me ask a couple of legal questions to wrap up from where we were talking a couple months ago. You had mentioned the benefits of a revocable living trust in a prior show, and you also mistakes in funding the trust. What exactly is a revocable living trust? And then let's talk about the interesting funding a trust. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, the revocable living trust is one of the most important tools that we use in estate planning. I like to analogize a trust to a corporation because it's easier to sort of understand it that way. We all know what a corporation is. It's a fictitious entity that exists because the law says it does. A trust is very similar, has different parties instead of officers and directors and shareholders. You've got the trustee who administers it. You have the beneficiaries for whose benefit it's administered, and the grantor. And a revocable trust, like it sounds, is revocable. And so we use that tool to address a lot of estate planning issues. But once you set up that trust, one of the most common mistakes is that people don't properly fund it. And what I mean by that is you really need to go through each and every asset title, every beneficiary designation, because if you don't, you run into the situation where it just doesn't operate as you intended. And I'll give you a couple examples. You wanted to leave assets to children in trust, but you name them as the beneficiary on a life insurance policy directly. You bypass the trust, and those kids get directly. Or a real world example where I had to actually argue a case before the U.S. Supreme Court is naming the wife at the time, later getting divorced, who's going to take that money on that life insurance. So if you fail to update those types of things. Or a very common example is when someone has a joint account with, let's say, one child and they have several children.
Joint account?
Like a joint bank account.
A bank account, okay.
Or a brokerage account, because that child's helping them, deal with their finances, so they put only that one child on the account, not realizing that their will doesn't matter at that point, or their trust doesn't matter at that point, because it's just going to go to that one child. So those are some very common mistakes that happen, but you have to really look at everything. And one of the assets that is often forgotten about is tangible personal property. So we're talking about not your real property and not your stocks and bonds, but your stuff, your artwork, your furniture, your jewelry, your clothing. And we run into all kinds of issues. I think, Matt, you deal with that stuff all the time. What are some of the issues you've run into on that?
Oh, you name it. I mean, I think people have lots and lots of stuff, and they try to figure out what the right solution is and where do I go and how do I go about it. One of the legal things is you got to make sure you have your ducks in a row going into the process, because something gets left out, it does become a challenge, and it ends up back with the legal guys versus making sure that things can be sold and disposed of properly. And we can get into that as
well, let me go back to a question for you.
Sure.
Just to be clear, depending on how property is titled, who owns it, if you have husband and wife on it, husband dies, what happens automatically?
Well, if you have titled jointly or by tenants by the entireties with a husband and wife, it's going to go automatically to that surviving spouse.
No will, no nothing.
It doesn't matter what the will says. But now you've got the surviving spouse and maybe it even still has the husband on it and he died. Now there are no directions in there, and where is it going to go at this point, and are you into probate? And you run into conservatorship issues or disability issues if you've got with real estate, for example, you have a husband and wife on a piece of real estate and you want to sell that real estate, but one of them becomes disabled and is not legally competent to sign the deed. You can have a lot of problems with real estate. And I know, Lori, you're in the real estate world. You must run into that sort of issue a fair amount. Have you seen that?
I definitely have. You've had situations where we actually had to get a notary. We had to go to the nursing home and get them to sign, but the notary had to actually have questions to make sure that they actually were competent to be able to have that conversation. So going back to the different documentation that you need in order to be able to allow me to sell the property makes a big difference.
I think one of the key things is making sure that you have put proper people in place to have the authority so that they can sell it, so that Lori can do her job, so Matt, you can do your job. So.
I think we heard from prior sessions that it's, we talked about the emotional, that, if you're disaffected from your kids, or you favor one kid for some reason or other, competency, maturity, needs extra help, disabled, whatever, good or bad, that you need to think that through beforehand and have it reflected in how your beneficiaries are stated, how your property is titled. Even though it automatically would go to a spouse, you may not want to do that. You may, for whatever reason, and if you haven't thought that through, it's
children from a prior marriage.
You have no votes after you're deceased.
Yes, that's true.
And if you're not prepared.
I also find we spend more money fighting over tangible personality because it's emotional. Who gets what? Who gets the flag that was over Dad's coffin, as opposed to the large bulk of the wealth, which is in stocks and real estate. So it's very important. A lot of people don't put time and attention into dealing with those things and directing where they should go to keep those fights down, because that causes a lot of fights, probably more fights than anything else.
What are, for all of you, what are some of the issues related to tangible personal property? That you've got stuff that's keepsakes, heirlooms, silver, art, all sorts of the vintage automobile that's down in the garage that Grandpa wanted you to have, and the musket from the Revolutionary War. How do you make decisions on what are the issues? How do you deal with that?
I'll tackle that, I guess, first and let them chime in, certainly with the experiences they've had. I think you have to look at the objects in the home, and it's important to find a way to differentiate the object from the memory. Because in the grand scheme of things, the memory is really all that matters. And so I have a play on words, and I say that everything in our house is just matter, right? Let's go back to our science class in the 5th grade. It's matter, it's carpet, it's wool, it's wood, it's plastic, it's leather, whatever it is, it's matter. But it's matter that matters. That might be 12th grade English by that point. But you get into that and you say, well, how do I deal with that? Well, the first thing you do is you say, okay, I'm going to take the memory portion, and I'm going to say, okay, I don't need, if I'm downsizing, for example, I don't need more than one object from the same memory. If it's in a death situation and we're now dealing with beneficiaries, they may go back and look at that and say, I want to remember my mom, but I don't necessarily need all of these things. You do run into challenges where you have lots of people who want lots of things, and you can get into battles and fighting, or maybe the legal documents weren't clear and all of a sudden this is going this way or that way, and people have to draw straws, or they choose this or that. And you can, and I've seen families battle. And I think the thing you have to remember is that a piece of real estate is the most expensive storage unit you'll ever see. And a lot of people think, oh, it's paid off. It doesn't cost me anything. I'm like, well, if you've seen taxes in Northern Virginia, and basic level of services, even the most basic of home can cost $1,000 a month to carry. Yeah. And if you spend 3 years and you spend $36,000 fighting, and I would say the average home, and Dan, you can certainly chime in here, but I think the average home is maybe $8,000 to $10,000 worth of personal property. And in a year's time, that can be absorbed by taxes. So you have to find a way to say, how do I deal with the emotion? And that's much better done in a planning stage while you're still alive to vote, while you can still talk to your kids about what's what, than it is to try to do it in an after-death situation where the battles can just ensue.
So you have to somehow make decisions on what do I send to Salvation Army, what do I sell at an estate sale, what do I keep, this is what Joe gets and Sally doesn't get, this is what maybe I donate to a museum. And during your lifetime, it seems like you have to begin making those decisions.
Well, I take a couple different approaches on that, because to some degree I want you to live the way you like to live. You know, you've earned the right, you're 85 years old, and you have earned the right to live however you please.
Right.
And so I want you to live, if you like having 15 pictures on that wall, I want you to live with 15 pictures on that wall. Nothing wrong with that. And when it comes to getting into the levels of donation to charity, especially to, say, the Salvation Army, or maybe having to deal with trash, we can deal with that in an unemotional manner after the fact much easier than we can before. The thing that people need to focus on more than anything is, what do the kids want? Where is there a possibility where they both want the same thing? And how do I begin to deal with that? Because that's what's going to cause the problem, especially if you have kids that are estranged, kids that don't get along. I mean, and that's where, you know, what ends up happening in that situation, with all due respect to Dan here, is they spend a ton of money in legal bills.
Yeah.
And you know, you've seen it, where
Oh,
the legal
absolutely.
bills are far greater than the value of the stuff, not to mention the taxes or the carrying costs. So you really got to plan carefully on the emotional side, not on the physical. The donation to, you know, Salvation Army, you know, Lori and I go through the house and we can work on that stuff. Okay, I don't want the stuff here. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's not the issue. It's the stuff that
So part of a good
Both
plan
people
is
want.
to have those decisions as best as possible made. We're going to have to go to a break, so
Sure.
we'll come back and talk a little bit about real estate, which is related but has some complexities of its own, and we'll talk about that. And maybe we can see if we've got some examples of how these things work. But we'll go to a break and come back, and sit tight. We'll be back. Thanks.
Hi, welcome back. Again, my name is Rodney Bates. I'm the Recreation Coordinator for the Rim Ramsey Recreation Center. Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about using the ball for a fitness routine. Okay? Now, the ball can be used in several different ways. Okay? Now, you don't need a real big ball, but just a nice size ball. You use a chair, or you can do it while you're standing up. Okay? Now, the ball can be used for plyometrics. Elbows out, lean on the edge of your chair, squeeze the ball, squeeze and twist slightly to the side. Inhale as you're going towards the middle, exhale out as you're going to the side. This will work not only your strength in your chest, but it works your obliques as you're twisting. When you're squeezing, it makes your stomach contract. And as you're twisting, it's going to strengthen your obliques. Okay, so you tone up your oblique area. Okay? Now, next, you're gonna put the ball down, you're gonna breathe out, squeeze the ball, squeeze as you're going up. Okay? Bring it down again, squeeze the ball as you're going up. Okay? This again will work your bicep and your forearm. Okay? Squeeze it as you're going up. Exhale out as you, anytime you exert your energy, exhale out, okay? Breathe out as you're going up. Great. Now, you're gonna take the ball again, still working your stomach and your obliques area. Take the ball, knees together. You're gonna squeeze the ball, both together, going slightly to the side, okay? You're gonna squeeze more with the bottom hand than the top hand. Okay, lean to the other side, squeeze to the side. Back up, exhale out. It's twisting and squeeze to the side. Come back towards the middle, squeeze, exhale out to the side. That's working your obliques again, and also your strength in your hands, in your arms and forearms. Okay? Now, you're gonna take the ball, put it between your knees, then you work your inner part of your thighs. Okay, heels together, you're gonna squeeze the ball, exhale out, hold for about 2 to 3 seconds, and relax. Squeeze, hold, then relax. Squeeze, hold, and relax. Good. Squeeze, hold, and relax. Next, you take the ball, put it by your feet. Okay, you're gonna lean slightly down at an angle. Okay, and you're gonna squeeze again with your feet. Then relax. This is still working the inner part of your thighs, but at a different angle. Okay, the first time we did it, it works the inner part of your thighs upward. Now it's working the lower inner part of your thighs towards the back. Relax. Squeeze, you're really feeling your groin area. And relax. One more time. Squeeze. And relax. Okay, next. You're going to take the ball, sit all the way back in the chair. Make sure your back is at the back part of the chair. And take the ball, hold it to the side. Now you're going to reach up like you're pushing the ball on top of a shelf. And come back down, hold it to the side. Exhale out as you're reaching up and put up on top of the shelf and back down. Okay? Go up, put it on top of that shelf and back down. Just working your shoulders. Okay? Go to the other side. Bring it up, twist, reach up, top of the shelf, put it down. Come back up, breathe out as you reach it up, top of the shelf. Okay, working your shoulders. Great. One more time. Go up. Put it on top of the shelf. And back down. That's great. Now, last time. You're going to open your legs wide. Take the ball. You're going to bring it towards your side right here. You're going to squeeze. And lean slightly as you're squeezing. Okay? Come back. Go towards the other side. Squeeze. And push. And reach. Good. This is working your lower abs, lower obliques to the angle. Okay? Breathe out again. Going towards the side. Come back. Breathe out. And back. Great. There's so many things you can do with the ball. I'm going to show you so much more next time. So thanks again for coming. Again, if you have any questions about any programs here for the city, come and visit us at the alexandriava.gov on our city web, or you're welcome to come to our center here on Mondays and Fridays. Again, I do the senior weight training program on Wednesdays, do the senior body part aerobics on Mondays and Fridays from 10 to 11. Okay? Well, thanks again. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
And we're back. We're here for this session with Mark Fries of Merrill Lynch, and we have special guest Lori Krause of Keller Williams Realty. We have Matt Quinn of Quinn's Auction Galleries, and we have Dan Ruttenberg from Smolin Plevy Law Firm. And we're having a discussion in the final stages of our three-part series on implementation. What do you do before decease and after, and if you've got a plan in place, hopefully, that how do you execute the plans? But now we want to focus a little bit on maybe the largest asset any of us will have, and that'll be in terms of our real estate.
Well, what I'd actually like to do is I'd like to tie in the tangible property
Sure.
for a minute. Is when Matt was talking about the property, the best thing you can do is make those decisions before you start moving. Maybe you're going to another community and you're not sure what you want to do, or maybe you're going to be doing more traveling. And the challenges that happen are when you're not there. Maybe the HVAC system goes out and the water pipes burst. Or maybe we have hurricane rains that come through and it floods the basement. You could lose a lot of your personal property just because of accidents that happen. And so now the best thing as far as the carrying cost, things like that, is to be able to make those decisions and then be able to look at the value of your home. You have the as-is value, and if you don't take care of that home, or if you're not there and you're not maintaining it as the same as when you were living in it, things start happening, like the roof starts to deteriorate or the appliances aren't working in the same manner, again, causing potential damage to the property. And so we really want to help you get the best value for your home. And so sometimes the value is in the land, or maybe the value is in all of the upgrades that we're going to do for the home. But your home is your greatest nest egg for most people, and we want to preserve that.
It sounds, those are the things you have to look at as any homeowner and making a transition to another property. But I think it
Absolutely.
gets exacerbated upon having a death event, that if that person's no longer decision making, and if they don't make these decisions beforehand to maintain the property, it falls to their heirs or their executors or whoever's responsible afterward. That may be a burden they're not really equipped to take on, and yet it falls to them.
That would be very correct.
Is that what can happen? When you said carrying costs, what do you mean by carrying costs?
Well, you can have the cost of just the insurance. And if the house is sitting vacant, you need to get a different insurance policy so that you're actually covered in the event of flooding or other matters. You need to have the taxes continue to be paid for. You have all of the utilities that should still be running in that home to protect that home. And you should have somebody that goes by on a weekly basis to check that property.
Who do you deal when in executing those? Can you delegate those to a management company? Does the realtor do those things? How much does the family do? What's the division of responsibility? How do you sort that out?
That really is something that should be discussed in a holistic approach.
Okay.
You should decide, maybe it would be property management. Property management usually doesn't go in on a weekly basis. But again, those are arrangements that could be made.
So if I may jump in, one of the things this can lend to is selling a house while someone's still alive, because you have to weigh the costs of all these carrying costs, and it might be that if someone moves into a facility and is no longer in that house, you want to sell that house. But you also have to make sure when you're doing that, you do an analysis to see, is there going to be a big tax bill? Because if somebody bought this house for very little money a long time ago and there's a lot of gains, if you sell the house before someone dies, you have to pay a lot of taxes on that. Whereas if you wait until someone dies, we talked about this in the last session, you can get a step up in basis, and basically what that means is sell the house without any capital gains. So these are both considerations that you need to look at, and you have to do an analysis on that.
What about the case where it's inherited, that the son or daughter of the deceased inherits the house after their death and title changes after the death? Is that a different case than if maybe it was gifted or sold at a discount before death?
So if you give the house to your kids, there's going to be a gain when they sell the house. The taxes doesn't occur until they sell it, but they're going to have the same. It's like they bought it for the $50,000 back in 1940 or whatever.
So they get exposed to capital gains.
So you don't necessarily want to do that before death, whereas if they inherit it, they can turn around, sell it the next day, and not have that gain. So that is the issue, and that's the analysis you have to do. But if there's not a lot of gain, because there are certain exclusions and those sorts of things, $250,000 for one person or $500,000 for a married couple, that you can exclude those for your principal residence. If you don't wait too long, again, you need to weigh that against the costs of keeping that and the risks of keeping it vacant.
Are all these maintenance and market issues related to another major category of investments, of assets in terms of investments? I mean, you don't run into some of these problems, I don't think.
I run into all these problems all the time.
Please tell us what
Only
they are.
because people don't plan ahead. And so I think Dan's point is very, very good, and Lori's point is very, very good. You're thinking about your house. You're thinking about your family, how are things can be divided up. What happens if you leave a house that's $1 million house and 2 children want the house, one child doesn't want the house, and then you have to pay the other child off somehow. You don't have the assets to do that. Then there's contention in the family.
Also, they might have to use investment assets in order to settle up other parts of the estate. I see.
So I spent a lot of time what I call family style meetings, which we talked about in our last show, which is basically having a conversation. And so you're going to have a house. How do you maximize the value of that house? Have the kids get involved in that. I know the parents might have liked the wallpaper in the kitchen, but maybe that's not really going to get maximum value for it. So Lori will come in and go, you need to do this. You need to fix the landscape up. You have a house that's there for 65 or 70-year-old people, and you're trying to sell it to a 30-year-old person. So things need to be done. You make sure your legal documents are all taken care of. And what Matt does, which is great, is like, you got a lot of stuff. Every time I go to somebody's house, because we do a lot of home meetings, they have more stuff than they're going to use if they move into a retirement community, or more stuff than all the kids want to pass on. So how do you have somebody come in and do a full assessment and figure out what's the best value you can get out of this? And I always describe it in 3 buckets, and I think Matt did a great job. Junk, stuff that's worth something, and stuff that's really worth something. And if you have something that's really worth something, you want to have a professional that really knows that skill, which Matt does, and how to figure that out.
I think you've nailed it there, Mark, but I also would say that you have to look at art as an asset class. And we haven't, in the discussion that we had today, really talking about the stuff and the life and what do we do with that. But there is that whole nother level of art as an asset class.
Yeah.
That's going to fall into the same capital gains rules that Dan's described. And what we have to look at is how do I, if I bought this for $100,000, it's worth $250,000 now, how do I do that? It's the same thing you deal in the finance world. So yes, there's a lot of ordinary stuff, but there's also can be the high end. And all of that, that's where that holistic approach comes in. How do I get the right team together to go through that? And that's what we're all here to do.
We're coming out of time, but I've got a question. How do you work together as a team? How do you make teamwork work for you in terms of, if you had a single client, how do you interact with one another to deal with all these issues?
Well, usually it might start with me because I'm the financial person, and so I would find out what's going on with the family situation, and then I need legal work done, so I would reach out to somebody like Dan to make sure that's all done correctly. And if they're trying to downsize into a smaller house, then they need to get rid of some of the stuff, so Matt would come into that part. And if you're thinking about what are they going to do with the house, how you can get maximum value, well, then you got Lori that would take care of that. So it's really a teamwork approach, and you want to have professionals that have expertise in all those areas to make sure you get maximum value.
So the
And
family
professionals that are working together.
Correct.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
the one that you can, if you have a fragmented team, you really can leave money on the table.
That's a great point.
yeah. No, and we've talked about the family might not agree. Wife is disaffected from the second family or the stepkids or whatever, and working your way through that, I think, is probably
Well, and
what-
timing the personal property affects making sure the real estate
Right.
gets sold. If your docs aren't in a row, that's timing.
I suspect those are things as a team that you encounter just about every day. So
Every day.
The last thing I would add is people get along way better while mom and dad are alive than
can
after
say that
mom and
again.
dad die. Things change. So do the planning now. Have the kids, have the discussion with the kids now, because you can influence once you're no longer there as a referee, it can turn into a free-for-all.
How many times do they say, oh, my kids get along? How many
Yeah.
times do you hear
Yeah.
that?
we're out of time, and I think you gave a very good summary of what needs to be done. So thank you very much. Thank you all very much. These are complex issues, but I hope we've sorted them out for our viewers and that they can do that. They will be able to be in touch. I think your names are on the screen, so they should reach out to you. But thank you very much in you have shed light on some complex things and appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for having
having
us.
us.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.